G'day and welcome to more Cowbell Please. My name is Ainsley, your host. So today's episode, you've probably clicked here because you saw it was Luke Smallbone, one half of the onstage part of For King and Country. I have known the Smallbone since the 1980s when we first met, and I've worked with him since then. We get into a lot of personal things, some deeper things, the origins of For King and Country. Now, if you're a For King and Country fan and you've come here thinking, ooh, I wonder what he's going to say. Yeah, there's some stuff here for you. All right. I hope you will subscribe and like. It really helps me, and I will probably have some more Smallbones on, so it's going to be worth knowing about that. Next week's guest is Jackie Patillo. She is the head of the Gospel Music Association that puts on the Dove Awards each year. Of course, For King and Country have won several of those. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. Again, like and subscribe, please. Here we go. Luke is a professional percussion player.
Professional is a stretch, but yes, okay.
You have probably played
I have played,
on
yep.
recordings.
Yep.
So give us the ding
All
in.
right,
This
yep.
is like the hammer of the judge.
Yeah. That just feels
Beautiful.
good, you know? Yeah, this feels...
Luke, welcome and thank you so much for doing this.
No.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Luke is 50% of For King and Country. We have been friends for many years. I've worked for your father since the 90s.
We go back, even when we were in Australia, obviously earlier last year, we go back so far that my first encounter with Ainsley would have probably been one that I don't remember because I would have been a child. Mm-hmm. But I distinctly remember when you moved to America. And in our household, it was fairly common to have, hey, so-and-so is going to come and stay here. And there was never any, like, how long is this going to go for? But do you remember our first discussion? Do you remember our first long-form discussion? Our first long-form discussion was over cameras.
Really?
Neither of which you or I are experts on.
No.
But you came and you were talking about cameras. I think I had just bought like a point-to-shoot Canon camera or something. And you and I, which is in our nature, went very long and very deep on cameras, which is probably both things that we don't actually know that much about.
I still know nothing. I'm learning every episode.
And for whatever reason, we got talking about technical things. And then soon after that, you introduced me to, on your probably somewhat illegal pirated version of Gallagher on your Apple iMac.
That's right. My earliest memories of you, of course, are showing up, and I guess in 2000 you'd have been like 13?
14.
What's the difference between you and Joel age-wise?
Joel is 2.5 years older than me.
You used to love, I don't know if you did it at the beginning, but you were on the lawnmower with your
headphones
headphones, Walkmans, I guess we had back in those days.
Yep.
Of course, you come from a music entertainment family, but what are your memories? What's that path?
Yeah, so I first started going out on the road when I was probably with our older sister, Rebecca St. James. So my first job out on the road, and this was just the decision that mom and dad had made, is that we were all going to go out on the road together. And I was a spotlight operator. I think I was 9 years old running a spotlight. It didn't make a ton of sense, but that's just what we did. And so I did that. I was also a drum tech for a guy named Andrew Payne, who was the first drummer that my sister had. And so those were some of the earliest official kind of jobs in the music industry. Eventually, my brother Daniel wanted to get off the road. He was a lighting director, and so I think I was 14, 15, and was a lighting director for my sister, who at that time was a Grammy Award-winning artist, and she was at the top of her game probably when I was doing that job. And so for quite a number of years, that's just what we did. I went out on the road. I did a little bit of background vocals for her at different periods. I mean, there was a time where I used to run lights and sing from the board, And so Ralph, Rebecca's sound guy, and obviously he's been our sound guy for years as well, would run a line across the middle aisle, and I would sing. And then it started to get a little bit outrageous. And so I stopped doing that for a little while. But I for a number of years was just kind of learnt the ropes of music and live performance out with Rebecca.
What did you think you were going to do with your life? Did you have any, like at that point, did you think, I'm just doing music business for my life? Or
it's funny. I and it's interesting raising now my wife Courtney and I, we got 4 kids, and I remember, the discussions of what do you want to do when you get older, and I think there's enormous amounts of pressure in that, and I felt that as a kid. Everyone else in my family, probably from the ages of 13, 14, and 15, had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do for the rest of their life. And for the most part, all of them are doing the things that they were doing at that age, except for me. When I was 13, 14, 15, I was one of those kids that could do everything slightly above average, but I wasn't extraordinary at anything. I was just okay. When we were out on the road with Rebecca, Focus on the Family had this magazine called Breakaway magazine, and it was for young boys. And they did an article on my brothers and I, and they came to this point and they said, "What do you think you're going to do when you're older?" And I literally said, "I think I'll work in an office one day," which is, and that shows you how clueless I was as to what I wanted to do. And so I, grew up on the road, could always kind of sing, never thought that much about it. And I was playing basketball actually in high school, and I tore my ACL in my left knee. And that was always the thing that in my family, that probably is 7 kids in the family. And so, you're all vying for a little bit of special, to feel special at least. And sports was the thing that maybe made me feel special, in my family. And so that was the thing that I felt like, whether or not it's coaching or whether, I don't think I was ever good enough to be a professional athlete, but that's the way I was going to go. And so as soon as I got hurt, I realized that I wasn't good enough and didn't have enough game tape, that I wasn't going to be able to make a go at playing, sports. And so I actually went to my mom and said, "Mom, everybody else has found kind of their thing in life. And, I think that sports was meant to be my thing. And now I feel like it's been taken from me. And I don't know what to do with it."
So you're what age at this point?
So I'm 16 and went to Mom and had this conversation. She said to me, "Luke, I just think that by the time you graduate high school, there's going to be one thing left for you to do." And for whatever reason, that was okay with me. Like that was all I kind of needed. And so anyway, I had surgery on my knee that day, December 26th. So my Christmas wasn't
Boxing
a wonderful
Day.
Yeah, it wasn't a wonderful Christmas, but had surgery, terrible process, start to, go through the rehab and all that sort of stuff. And there was an album by the band Switchfoot. They just released the album, The Beautiful Letdown.
Huge.
And I remember listening to that and just thinking to myself, I wonder if I could write a song for someone else like this music is impacting me. And that was basically the thought. That I never really put anything else. I remember getting an iPod and having the little voice recorder on top. You remember that thing you could slide in? And I used to just start singing melodies in. Never had any thought as to where they would go. Never had any reason as to what it would do. I graduated high school. Didn't feel like I was meant to go to college, and probably still a little lost. And Joel comes to me and says, "Hey, what do you think about writing on some songs and singing on some demos and just seeing where music could take us?" And that was the beginning of a fairly difficult journey, to be honest. I mean, any new beginning, any new dream is extremely fragile, as you know.
Yeah.
And but that was what kind of got me to considering what would music look like.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I'm tracking.
Yeah, you're thinking through.
I'm tracking Joel's part of the story, because I was doing a bunch of demos with him, and we were doing productions together. And
do you remember working on that song Close to You with Joel?
Yes.
And we were in a hotel room, and Dad must have called you.
Yeah.
And said, "Hey, I just think that Joel can't maybe quite do this on his own. Do you think Luke could work together?" And you started laughing and said, "Absolutely not."
Did I?
You said Joel would never go for this, or something like that.
Yeah, now you say that.
I still remember
from
that
the
song.
moment Joel burst into the kitchen and was, the months I was living with you in the basement.
Yeah.
He always had that boy band rock star thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
and I always thought the boy can be whatever he wants to be. Well, he pounded for a long time on trying to be
that thing.
But he didn't want to be in the shadow of Rebecca.
Yeah.
He wanted to be outside in the mainstream. And so I do remember Joel saying to me, sitting at Main Street in that studio where we were working, and saying, "Dad thinks it should be a duo," and then talking it over with Jolie, and I didn't know what to make of it at the time.
I don't think
but I
did
remember thinking, Joel's not going to go for that. Like, he wants to be his own thing.
Yeah.
I've seen those little clips at the premiere with the documentary coming where he talks about that moment where that turned and he was all about it. But anyway, I want to hear your side of it.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so we started working together and you know, it was interesting because Joel had probably from a pretty young age, obviously he was a background singer for Rebecca, and it was almost like he was destined to do something in this world from a very, very young age.
Yeah, he was.
But the problem was it wasn't overly unique and it didn't really get any traction. And so Dad's idea was, hey, you just need something a little bit different. And honestly, for anyone who's listening that is thinking about music, if you want to be as a mixer, as an engineer, whatever it might be, if someone is already doing it well and you want to be just like them, it's probably never going to work out for you. Because if there's someone already doing it well, why wouldn't those people just pick that engineer? Why wouldn't they just pick that artist? Because it's already existing. You've got to figure out a way to be unique, to be one of one. You got to do something else. You got to do something else. You got to do something unique. So from the get-go, I was a little bit behind the eight ball because I'd never written songs. I'd never sung in front of a microphone. I had started to do a little bit of background singing. So I could always, no one ever taught me how to sing. No one ever taught me how to harmonize. You know, it was just something that I did growing up. I sung at church. I would do some plays, but I never really thought of it as...
You'd been playing drums.
But I'd played drums.
You
so
did.
as a young man, I loved drums. I still do to this day. Just love drums, love creating beats. And so that was a little bit more my thing. So at one point, you know, the idea was, all right, they'll do a duo and Luke will be behind the drum set. Joel will be, you know, doing the lead thing. And so anyway, we go on, we start writing these songs. We meet a guy named Sean Schenkel, who had worked on our sister's album, and he decides to sign us to a development deal. Okay, the whole idea was, hey, we'll get you some really good, we'll write some songs, we'll get you some good demos, and within 6 months, we'll go shop this thing to record labels. Well, I think it ended up being 4 or 5 years.
Oh, you know, really?
That's how long it was.
And so it was all the time with Sean in that 4 or 5 years?
For the most part. He's the guy that taught me how to write songs. He taught me how to sing in front of a microphone. I'll never forget, we were sitting there doing these vocal sessions, and he was really brutal on vocals. I mean, it was unbelievable how tough it was. And he used to kept saying to me, I need more. And I used to always think to myself, like, I'm singing as hard as I can. And at one point, something clicked with me. When he said more, I thought that he meant more power, thought more intensity. The truth is, he wanted more unique. It was not the easiest period of time. When you're trying to figure out a way through, it was a very trying, very difficult period of time. We were writing, you know, a lot of songs every week and every month. They weren't very good. You're getting told no a lot, and then you'd go have these song meetings. You'd get, you know, hey, this song's not good enough. A very, very difficult time, but it was actually the very thing that I think I needed to develop what was in me, because they were, you know, because Joel, once again, he was a few years ahead of me. And so there were these moments where, you know, Sean would be like, well, I want to hear what you have to say, Luke. And at some point you sit there and you're like, well, I don't know what I think. Well, you're allowed to think. You're allowed to have thoughts. You're allowed to have, you know, and so then we just went on this journey of learning how to write songs together.
I think back to the same kind of points in my career when people would ask me what I thought. You've actually got subconscious feelings, gut feelings, but being able to actually be in touch with them and then put words to it, I guess analyze what you're thinking or what you're feeling, where your gut is at.
So here was the biggest lesson that happened to me when it came to songwriting is I'll never forget the first song that I was ever proud of writing was a song called Crave. It was
love that song.
Probably 17, 18 years ago now. I mean, it was a long time ago. And what had happened was I was going to the studio and I was going by myself. I don't know why Joel wasn't around. And I had been reading other artists' lyrics and then trying, because poetry obviously is difficult to decipher what it means sometimes. So I'd read the lyrics and then we would have this meeting, and it was kind of to teach, hey, let's work on poetry. Let's work on, lyric writing and those types of things. So I would try and decipher what the songs were meaning. So I was studying all these different songs. There was some U2, there was some other, bands of the 80s and late 70s. And I would kind of come up with a synopsis, and we would discuss it like this. It would be Sean sitting in your chair, I'd be sitting in mine. We'd discuss it. And I said to him, I was like, man, it's so funny. You read these lyrics and you just realize that everybody's craving hope. They're all saying it in different ways, using different words, but they're all craving this thing called hope. And he said, oh, well, there's probably a song there. So we start working on this song. And anyway, it becomes this song that is the title track of the first record. And I remember leaving there, and I had a CD, put it in my car. I had a Ford Taurus car, put it in the car, and I play it. And I remember thinking to myself, if no one ever hears this song, I'm proud of this song. This song means something to me. And what had happened with the 4 years prior is I was trying to write songs that other people would like. And what happened in that moment is I started to write songs that Luke likes, that Luke appreciates, that Luke needs to comfort his own soul. And that was the single thing that transformed me into being a songwriter that probably would never eventuate to anything, to being someone who had thoughts, who had dreams, who had stories worth telling.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that. I thoroughly enjoyed that song, and I remember, I think Otto was the A&R person at the beginning with that record, and they were talking singles, and I was like, just let me do something to that song. Yeah. Like, and make a production and do a radio. Of course, it didn't work at radio.
It did single, and
we did single it.
Yep, but it wasn't a big hit.
But it wasn't the big hit, but I too was like, I was proud of that. I was like, I love that thing.
That's the other thing. Music is very interesting. I mean, pop music is popular music. So that's why you have pop rap, urban, country, it's just popular music. But really what popular music is doing, it's accessible to a large amount of people. That's essentially what popular music is. But here's the thing. There are certain songs that attract 6, 7, 8, 9 that for a certain group of people are ravenous about that song. That song isn't necessarily worse than the song that is broader. It's just for a certain eclectic group of people. But I've had people come up and say that was one of their favorite songs that they'd ever heard.
Is that right? Yeah. Obviously you migrated at some point from the Sean Shankle to what's the next step? Yeah.
Yeah, so what ended up happening was there was another song that was written, it was called Sane. I don't know if you remember that. It's on the first record as well. And Judy Stakey, who worked at Warner Chappell at the time, heard the song. And we had built a little bit of a relationship with Judy. And she, for whatever reason, heard that song and said, I want to sign you guys to a publishing deal. And so our history in music was always a little bit like this. We never had this like massive, it was always, whenever we were about to quit, we got a little bit of encouragement. And it just kind of always was steady, if that makes sense. But it was really tough going for a lot of time. So eventually we signed a publishing deal with Judy. And that was something that was an encouragement, okay, we're on to something then. And then eventually at Word Records, there was a big turnover and a bunch of people got fired and all this sort of stuff.
As happens every so many years in this business.
And there was a new CEO at Word, and there was a big regime change. And so Otto, who you mentioned, A&R, the first project, I think had a meeting with him, new CEO, saying, hey, what do you got? Do you have anybody you're looking at? And he just said, there's these two brothers. I think these are the guys that you need to kind of build a new regime on. And sure enough, I think he just heard some rough demos and said, yeah, I'm going to sign him. And it was nothing like the process that we had gone through up until that time. He had heard those couple songs, Sane and Crave and some of these other things. And it was just like, okay, to the point where even the record label, the rest of the people that worked at the record label were like, you have to do a showcase? Like, you have to do. So sure enough, we do a showcase, and I think it validated what he was thinking. He was like, yeah, I'm going to sign these guys. So anyway, we signed to them, and we go and we make a record. And we go finish the record. We even have a celebratory dinner, kind of saying, hey, we made this record. And then I get married, all right? I go on my honeymoon, and Courtney was like, hey, I want to look at the wedding pictures. Can we get online? So we're, 2 or 3 days into our honeymoon, and I'm like, yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So we go to an internet cafe. Remember when those were the things? Oh, yeah. Go to an internet cafe. She gets online, and so I'm like, I'll get online and check my email as well. And I get an email saying that new CEO had probably been there for 2 years. Now he had been let go, and Rod Riley comes in, and so we have this. Another regime change. And I literally said to Courtney on our honeymoon, I was like, I think our world's going to be pretty different when we get home. So we come home, we have all these meetings with the label, and they come to us and basically say, we don't like the record as it is. We want to interject 3 new songs. And I just remember, so this freaked out Joel. Joel was all like, I don't know if we can do this. We've just given our heart and soul to these songs, and now they want 3 more. It just feels like they just keep kicking the ball down the hill,
moving the goalposts.
Things are changing. And I just said to him, he called me one day. I remember specifically where I was. I was doing a customer service job at the time to try and make ends meet. And he said, well, what do you make of this? And I said, man, when there's a door open, I just think you walk through it. And sure enough, he was like, all right, so we go and write 3 songs. Well, ironically, those songs were Busted Heart, The Proof of Your Love, Middle of Your Heart. They were the 3 singles off of the album. If we did not have those 3 singles, we probably wouldn't be talking here today. And so that was what really got us, kind of going in life. The biggest song out of that was a song called The Proof of Your Love.
I remember that record being done and that happening. Yeah. Part of that process.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I remember speaking to Sean Schenkel a few years actually just ago, and we were reminiscing on our early, our time together. That was bumpy for him and bumpy for us. Obviously, we're still friends and we're all good, but very, very difficult period of time. So we get to the point we release an album, we start touring a lot. If you're out there and listening and you're a new artist and you've got other people in your life, those other people in your life have a lot of grace for new artists, because it's the hardest you'll ever work in your life, and it still might not work. And it's very risky, it's very scary. And so we were out there working really hard. Sean, going back, he said, one of the things I realized looking back is you guys had talent, but you didn't have anything to write about. And so we got those few songs on that first album, and it was successful enough for us to get another album, right? Well, at that time, I actually started to get really, really sick. And I got diagnosed with a disease, an autoimmune disease, and to the point that I have to come off the road, for 3 months. And all of a sudden, the things that we didn't have anything to write about, when you get really sick, and my wife had told me once, she's like, you just can't leave me here. That's how sick I got. And it's funny to even think about these things, because you talk about, this is about 11, 12 years ago, but yet somehow those things are still pretty raw. And so anyway, I get really sick, come off the road, and for about 3 months, and to be honest, not to interject the spiritual in it at some level, but I think I was pretty angry at God at some level, and I actually remember praying a prayer. I said, God, I feel like I'm out here doing the things that you've called me to do, asked me to do, and yet I feel like I get repaid with sickness, And I basically just said, it's probably the first honest prayer I think I prayed in my entire life at that point. And I felt God very clearly say to me, Luke, I'm not interested in your efforts. I'm not interested in your writing more songs for me or accomplishing something more for me. I'm just interested in you. Just want more time. I want more of you. And for whatever reason, it kind of changed my life, that prayer. And I don't think it was because of that prayer. It might have been, I don't know. But I started to get better. And all of a sudden, all of the things that I probably, when you're writing songs and you may not have thoughts, all of a sudden I had thoughts, so many thoughts. And then we started working on a new record. I remember doing, writing sessions, barely able to get off of the couch type thing, and so out of that were songs, Fix My Eyes. Out of that were songs, Shoulders was a big one for me, and Run Wild was on that record. And we as people do want to run away from struggle, but struggle is probably one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been given. And up until that portion of my life, I don't think I had really struggled. I don't think I'd wrestled with my faith. I don't think I'd wrestled with my hopes and my dreams. I don't think I had dealt with maybe anger that was building up internally inside me. And all of a sudden, I had to go do something about it. And I think that struggle is probably one of the greatest gifts that God's actually ever given me.
That is a great lesson for life. I mean, I've had my own.
Yeah.
But things that are related to you. First of all, your dad going broke.
Yep. Well, by the way, when are you getting Dad on this podcast?
Oh, he's coming.
Yeah, I figured.
I'm going to space the Smallbones
Yeah, there
out.
you go.
It's not going to be the Smallbone show. It's going to be other people. But so your dad goes broke after he moves to America, and this is the formative thing that makes the Smallbone family what it is. It moves him from hard-nosed and ambitious, like driven, but he becomes more spiritual because your mum, for a start, that valley was what formed you into the person that could bring into the world Rebecca St. James and for King and Country. These things wouldn't have happened without that. I remember, by the way, visiting you. We had done some kind of little celebration with the label and you couldn't be there.
Yeah.
And we all came to your house afterwards. Do you remember that? And you were just laying on the couch and you were explaining in some graphic detail what your life was looking like at that point.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It wasn't good. But what I do like about what you just said there was, I think there's a psychosomatic unity. You know, what's going on in your body. I'm not saying it's caused by your mind, but I think all are together. And as your spirit kind of got awakened and healed, you know, your body did too. Like there was
Look, I think
happening.
There's science to that now. I don't fully know it. There's a big book right now about epigenetics and, you know, that cancer and all these diseases is 5% DNA and the rest of it is basically how you live in life, what you put into it and what you think.
Yes.
And I think, look, at the end of the day, I think that's what I lived, but you know, to your point, it's different. It's still emotional for me. It's still emotional for my dad, right? Mm-hmm. You know, that's my version of what Dad walked through, right? You know, I was too sick to hold my son at one point. I mean, it was rough stuff, but I wouldn't trade it. You know, I don't want to go through it again, but there's just something about the perspective that it gave me in life. You know what? Solomon always, his whole goal was, God, just give me wisdom. Dude, sometimes wisdom is found in enormous amounts of difficulty, and I don't think we should run from it. You know, I think that's probably what I've learned. You know, I was obviously mid-20s when this was all going on, but I've just kind of learned to lean into the struggle a little bit more, and it's taught me a lot.
I heard a preacher once say, "There's no victory without a battle."
Yeah,
you know, like the upside only comes from the low side.
That's right.
The hills are created by valleys.
That's right.
Like all of that. And I think, so yeah, you got to embrace that.
Yeah.
That the darker, the painful. I'm not saying you go look for it.
No.
But that's the thing. I mean, at my age, that I feel like you just keep learning the same lesson over and over. And when something hard happens, at least by my age, I understand that's not the end. It doesn't finish here.
You can walk through it.
It's how can I get up and walk, you know, we'll learn from this and be better. You did get better. And by the way, for those listening, my son has a very similar situation, autoimmune. So, you know, Luke and I have talked about this quite a bit. You did find a path forward where this was able to be managed and you're able to return to function.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is where
I'm
at. That
and
health journey is sort of.
And, you know, it's funny, you know, you keep learning lessons. You know, I felt, you know, I don't know if I ever told you this, but a year and a half ago or so, I was like, you know, I'm going to try and get off this medicine. And I started to get sick again. And so I
didn't know that.
So now, not to the same level, because I could see the signs now. And it was like, oh, this is not right.
Right.
So I get back on. Yeah. So you're right. I manage it. And you know, it's very strange to think through, you know, if I'm not in the modern context of the world, where this medicine that I'm on, that I'm just on really won, it helps me. If I didn't have that, what would my life look like? I don't know. Kind of scary to think about, but I have it, and I have to be, you know, content with, you know, maybe a little bit of a thorn in my side. I mean, it remains at some level.
What's your frequency now? Are you like once every 6 weeks, or where are you at?
Oh, for the medicine? Yeah. I go once every 6 weeks.
Once every, the same as my boy.
So I used to have to go once every 2 months, but we had to bump it up a little bit apparently. So
Yeah.
You go get these. So for those of you who don't know, you go get these IVs and you sit there. Is he on?
Yeah, he's doing the same. What do they call it? Something biologic or whatever.
Yeah, it's a biologic.
It's a biologic, and we haven't tried taking him off because our doctor said
It's very
it's it.
It's
like
basically it.
And also once you go off for too long,
Your body
it doesn't
builds up.
work again.
Yep.
Like
Thankful they had to do a big test for me.
Oh, they did?
And they said, you haven't built up any it's basically like your body can become allergic to the medicine that was once helping it.
Oh.
And somehow mine had, I didn't get off. I got off of it for maybe 3 or 4 months.
Like I listen to a lot of history things, and like I listened to a book on Napoleon, and this has been going on for the whole of history. People just died.
I know.
One of the Caesars had this.
William Wilberforce had, so I technically have a disease called ulcerative colitis, and I'm guessing your son does as well. He had it. And what's funny about it is he still lived actually a pretty long life, but dealt with some sort of complications and misery.
It was just miserable
along the way, and never really found relief. I mean, we're very fortunate to live in a day where, for the most part, we can usually crack the code on quite, at least medically, quite a lot of medical things. Not all of them, but quite a lot.
It's going to be interesting to see where this journey goes.
I know.
Like in 20 years, we're going to look back and go, remember we had to go every 6 weeks?
I know. It's crazy.
All right. So you're on the mend.
Yeah.
You're doing the second record.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you this, though, because after seeing that moment where Joel realizes he needs you because you were sick.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go and do those shows. And he watched. So the little clip in this documentary, they're making a documentary, by the way, which is a follow-up to Unsung Hero, I guess.
Yeah.
It's more the Fakian country perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Joel mentions that he needed, like he realized he needed you. What's your side of that?
People comment a lot on the fact that, look, I've worked with family basically my whole life, and there's pros and cons to that. In some cases, they can ridicule it at some level. I have worked with family. One of the things I think I realized is, and I don't know if it's the same with your brother, but man, you want your brother's approval.
Oh, yeah.
You actually said before we got this going, like, hey, he liked the podcast that I did. It meant something to you.
It did.
So for me, I'm sitting there watching my brother on television, do a big festival thing, and he's saying that I couldn't be there. It was an emotional moment for me. And then for him to kind of pick up the phone and basically say, yeah, I don't want to do this alone anymore. It meant a lot to me.
It cemented the thing.
I think it did. I think it cemented. It gave us a future. Because if you're two isolated, two islands working together, it can work for a while. But here's the deal, man. You're going to go through hard things together. If you've got a business partner, you're going to go through hard things together. If you're going to get married, you're going to go through hard things together. The thing that defines those relationships is, can you overcome conflict? Can you actually go deep enough and resolve differences? If you can resolve differences, you can go apply that to basically probably any business idea, and you'll actually probably make a go of it. And I'm not saying it'll be massive, but you'll probably figure it out. Joel, I think at that point for both of us, gave us the ability to resolve our differences and to see that I was wanted and needed. I think that infused the passion for the music and the things that we were to do in the years to follow.
I remember you saying to me once, it's not whether you fight, it's how well you fight. It's like the quality of what you do in the fight. And my dad always used to say, when you're going to just always be kind. Like say what you have to say, but be kind. And it is interesting with the sibling thing. You just said something to me that I hadn't really put two and two together with my brother. That is the similar dynamic to what you're doing with Joel. Now, we're not in partnership with anything. There's that verse, it's a proverb in the Bible where it's like, the criticism of a close friend is far more valuable, than the sugar from your enemy or whatever, or from anybody else. Like, because it's the truth and they care.
People ask a decent amount in interviews and different things and say, well, how do you deal with, applause or encouragement, or when a record label person comes up and says how wonderful a project that you've worked on or whatever it might be. And the truth is, and maybe this is wrong of me, I don't really listen to it. There's a few people in my life, and they're going to be within the 10 to 30 people in my life.
Yep.
I listen to them.
Yeah.
I listen to them and hopefully the man upstairs. Yeah. And outside of those things, yeah, it's just, I don't listen to it.
There's so much truth in that. I mean, it's funny how you replay the odd wound, but the only people who can wound you are the people who are close.
That's right.
In many ways, you know, and it'll be 3 a.m. when I'll replay something that somebody that was close to me, and somehow I have to work that through.
Yep. You have to work it out.
Stacey would say to me all the time, she said, I read your emails. People are always praising you. I don't know what your problem is. And I'll be like,
yeah, you don't care. You don't care what they think. Yeah.
You know,
doesn't matter. When my wife tells me that she was proud of me, and you know, you think of it and it evokes emotion in me now, because the truth is she doesn't go around saying that she's proud of me all the time. Though I know that she is, but there was something about a moment when she looked at me and she just said, hey, I just want you to know I'm really proud of you. It meant the world, because at the end of the day, man, we're living most of our lives for the ones that are closest to us, for them to look at us as that we're worth something.
Yeah.
You know? And sometimes I think the people that are closest to us, they're giving you one of life's necessities.
Yeah.
And that's encouragement. Everyone needs encouragement. But the ones that you hold close, that encouragement really means a lot.
When Stacey, who lives with me, she comes and says something that she's noticed my progression at a personal level,
it's a big deal.
That you can't beat that. You can only get that from someone who actually cares.
That's right.
And is seeing the inside of your life.
Yeah.
Well, Marcel was here because he does video. He's a video guy, right?
Great dude.
He's placing these lights. He's like telling me about color grading and all these things that I've never paid any attention to in my life.
You want to know a funny story about Marcelo?
Go ahead.
Is he came to our house when we had moved and wet the bed at our house.
Marcel did?
He did. And he came up to me.
Oh,
he came
Lord.
up to me within the last year or two. It was like, hey man, you remember that? And I didn't remember it, but he was like, I went to bed at your house when I was like 6.
That's fantastic. I'm sure Marcel will appreciate that. Well,
you should just send him that clip.
Well, he was telling me that a very high-profile artist who had been through a very difficult thing, an extremely death in the family, it was a tragedy, and in a public way, he hasn't gotten to work it through. All he's gotten is a 5-minute kind of a collapsed version of the story to help sell the songs that come out of it, rather than an in-depth kind of backing up the story.
Absolutely. Part of the reason why I'm sitting here is because you and I have had these types of chats since the beginning of time. I mean, how many times we would be working on something and you and I would be chatting and Joe would say, hey, we actually need to do some work here. Yeah. Because it would go for so long.
Absolutely.
But I have realized that there's millions and millions of other people. You and I are not really very alike, but similar at the core, at core issues.
Core values would be in the same place.
So we can get together and we have great affinity. We can have at the end of the day, I've realized there's millions and millions, billions of people that are very similar to us. Not exactly the same, but similar. So if I'm going through something really tragic and I write a song about it, there's a great chance that it can give a little bit of hope, a little bit of validation, a little bit of encouragement to millions of other people. So I don't write songs for other people very much anymore. I'm writing them for me, unless it's a very specific story of something that I know that really moved me or changed me or impacted me. Because I got to work out my own stuff. And I've just realized that if I go and try and write a good song for someone else, it won't have meat, it won't have heart, it won't mean something. So when I get into the studio and I start singing a song that moves me, you can hear it. Because the truth is, we live in a town where the amount of B-sides that you've heard on country records or Christian records, or whatever it might be, that you're like, this is good. Yeah. It's doing all the right things. It's catchy, decent thought, whatever. But for some reason, you don't care. Yeah. And the reason being, it doesn't have heart. It doesn't have something that grabs you. It doesn't have rawness. It doesn't have something that makes you go, I've been there. And that's why the great songs are the ones where usually someone tells a story about something. I've often said this, songs are about the greatest delights in a life or the lowest of lows, because we don't remember much in the middle. We would just remember the highs and the lows.
Not the mundane.
Not the mundane. So that's why I write songs from that perspective, is because at the end of the day, you and I haven't had the same life, but we've walked through similar things. We've walked through hardship. We've walked through the great delights. And that's why I choose to try and write the songs about these things.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed, when I get to hear your music as it comes across the board, and because when I'm mixing it, I'm hearing every word, every note, everything, the vocal performances, everything. And I do highly respect the heart you're bringing into it. So I'm just saying that from somewhat of a fan, I guess.
Well, I think that humanity understands, in some cases, humanity is looking for a little bit of company. And I think when you can articulate what another cannot, meaning that's what a poet's job is. That's why when you read poetry and you sit there and you're like, why am I drawn to this? It's because the poet is writing something that resonates with you at such a core, deep level. And you realize you've walked through something that poet is explaining, but you never had the right words to do it. That's really what music does, is giving words to either, like I say, the greatest delights or your greatest sorrows. And it gives me a lot of purpose in life to actually write those songs. You don't understand how many times in a song, when we're writing a song, I will lean over to Joel or whoever we're working with writing, and I'll just say, why should everyone care? Like what does this actually mean? A really cool twist of phrase, good, but I don't care. Make me care. Obviously, that's if someone else is driving the lyric more than I am in that moment. Make me care. Or if I'm writing the lyric, I ask myself, is that the truest thought? Is that actually honest enough? And hopefully, in that point, you get raw, you get depth.
The universal human experience that everyone can relate to. Because you guys, I mean, God Only Knows, Burn the Ships. I mean, for me, Burn the Ships means a lot, because when I worked on the mix of that particular song, I was struggling with some stuff in my own life, and it inspired me to make a change, which I did.
It's interesting you bring up that song. If there was one song that I would say that we've been a part of in the last however many years that I have seen more, God only knows, obviously, to look at someone who's struggled with mental health, there's this depth, there's this, it's our biggest song that we've ever had. But Burn the Ships, in some cases, I think it means more to people than it ever has, because they went through the pandemic and they had to face a lot of their stuff. For whatever reason, that song has become more important to people as the years have gone by. And it's because what you went through, maybe in 18 or 19, whatever it was, a lot of the world had to face during the pandemic, because loneliness is particularly dangerous. And I think that people felt really, really lonely during the pandemic, and they had to figure out. So what they do, they find something. And so for whatever reason, if I was to actually talk about one song that when we sing now, that is, you can see something happening in the room, it would be that song. That's how potent that is, because people have stuff.
It's life-changing.
It's life, and they've got to move on from it. You know? And you have a choice. No one's going to make you make the choice. But, I think that song sums up, I think, for a lot of people, what they hope to do. And you have a choice. If you hope to do something, you have a choice. Do you do it or do you not? Some do and reap the benefits of it, and some don't, or they delay it. And I think that song has taken on new life, partially because of the pandemic.
Embarrassing story. Do you have one?
Do I have an embarrassing story?
One where when you think back inside, you go, oh, what did I do that for?
Okay, so this happened on stage, and it is still spoken about. We went to, I think it was 2016, because this was in promotion of a movie, and we had gone to a women's event. It was an all women's event. So because we were releasing a movie called Priceless, it was about human trafficking. Thought, hey, this would be, a lot of these ladies would probably want to be a part of going to see the movie, and it's something that's right, it's a thing that they would champion. And so I'm up on stage, and we had this song called It's Not Over Yet, and we used to get these people to wave, the audience to wave their hands. Not always my favorite part, but we'd wave their hands. This is the way to get the crowd involved. And so we used to, Joel and I, and would still do it. Like you banter back and forth at some level. It's not scripted. You know, you just come up with like, how are they doing here tonight? And you know, what's going on? And well, what was crazy about the women's event is they were perfect. Every single woman did it. And it was like seeing this like sea of whatever. So Joel goes, what do you think? And I said, as a male, to all of the women, man, they're just so obedient.
Oh.
and so I was just looking at it going like, that's just what I saw. I wasn't thinking that it was a women's event or whatever. And then he goes, you can't say that. And I doubled down. And not being completely oblivious to what was going on.
It's fantastic.
Going, and I just said, oh, but that's true. They're just so obedient. I mean, look, it's perfect. To the point where he's feeling so embarrassed, we just start the song and move on. After the show, they all come up to me, everybody on stage is like, man, did you realize what you just said? And I'm like, kind of, you know, and it was, you just could never have it back. And I thought we would get letters by the thousands or whatever, and no one ever commented on it. But within the band, that was Luke's lowest moment on stage of saying the stupidest thing that you could ever say to a women's conference.
I have a long stream of embarrassing stories.
You do. Having known you for a while, there are a few of those.
I have a long stream of them, and I do think that every human on the planet
should have a good one.
Well, it's part of maturity, getting to a point where you can repeat your embarrassing moment.
That's true.
And be distant, like be secure enough in yourself to give that story.
Yeah. Well, just so you're aware, I, outside of our internal team, don't think I've ever shared that story. That's how the level of embarrassing of in some cases, I hope that everyone would listen to this, laugh, and forget that ever came from Luke.
Dude, see, here's the thing. That's not bad. I mean, I get the somewhat politically incorrect. Dude, I mean, I remember Jolie.
Oh, he said some stupid things on stage.
No, this isn't an on stage. No, I can't share that story.
Okay.
That's not going to work.
Well, look, Ainsley just put his filter on. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, I'm going to cut this out, but it was the one where he said,
oh, yeah, you can't. Yeah,
I can't put that one in.
No,
I filtered that.
That is an unbelievable story. But anyway.
Okay, Luke, there's a few rules on the More Cowbell Please podcast. You're not allowed to swear. There's no smoking. There's no drug taking or drinking. But I'm like, completely like, I'm going to bleep all your swear words out.
I would have said, hey, that works out very well for me.
Yeah. Anyway, mate, thank you for coming and doing this. You're a blessing to me, and the fact that you agreed to do this means a lot to me. So thanks, mate.
I have said this for years. It is very difficult to acquire new old friends. You have been an old friend for a long time, and you're a valued one at that. And so grateful that we could have this time to chat, and I'm sure there will be more at some point.
I appreciate you saying that. And mate, it's always a handshake. That's the way I finish out. And
that's very Ainsley Grosser.
Till next time. That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Luke Smallbone. I certainly did. If you like and subscribe, you'll tell the algorithm that you like this, that you should want to see more of it. It'll encourage me and the other Smallbones to come on over the next few months. So please do that. We have Jackie Patillo next week, as I mentioned earlier. She is the head of the Gospel Music Association. Like and subscribe, please. We will see you next week. May all the audio that hits your ears be awesome.